Well, hey everybody, we're back on the blog this week, and I'm super excited that this is my first Zoom interview of 2024. I have Robin Pearson with me. Hi, Robin.
Hello, hello. Good morning.
Hi, glad to have you here, and excited to just talk through your writing journey, get to know you a little bit, have people learn about your books and your new book that's coming out soon. So we're just going to go ahead and jump in right now with you introducing yourself and just tell a little bit about you, your family, and what you just want people to know about Robin Pearson.
Well, I was a neurosurgeon before I started homeschooling. No.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say, oh my goodness. Wow.
I know I gave all of that up, the homeschool and the mountains. No. I'm a homeschooling mom. I have 7 children
Oh
and
gosh, God bless you.
well, I only homeschool my favorites. The rest I just leave them outside. No, they range now from 26 down to 11. So they've slowly been, we checking off the boxes and
Yeah.
moving them out. And so we've been at it since I think 2003, 2004. We started homeschooling and it's been great. And I published my first book. Well, my first book was published in 2020 with A Long Time Coming. And before that, I was an editor and freelance writer. And now my fourth book with Dysfunction Junction. So it's great. We still have 4 at home, about to graduate, our fourth born, and then we'll keep torturing 3 for the next few years. So it's been great. It's a great journey. Lots of inspiration and distraction at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you're pouring yourself into the most important job that God gave us, and that's parenting. So,
Yeah, yeah. And marriage, of course. I've been married to Eddie almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years this winter. So we met in college, like our freshman year of college, and it's I guess we've been together about 34 years now. So yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
My husband and I met at age 13,
Oh,
married at
wow.
18. So we've been married
Wow.
42 years. We just celebrated
Wow.
42.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. What a blessing. Wow. Wow.
I love hearing about marriages that have lasted,
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
long term. So
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us about any hobbies maybe that you have, and have you incorporated hobbies into any of your stories?
I love music. My mother started us out with piano lessons. Like all of us had to take piano
Oh,
lessons.
yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, I remember crying to start taking them because my older sisters, I was the youngest. I am the youngest of 3. And I cried to start taking lessons because, I'd go down there and, watch them play and practice. And then I cried to quit. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like cry
Been there,
in and
done
cry
that.
out. So after about 9 years of lessons, I was allowed to quit, but then I, started taking them again in college because I
Oh,
realized, what a great thing it was. And I love music, so I've basically, had all of my children take lessons as well, or I've taught them, either from someone
mhm,
else. And so I love music. Like it just soothes me. I love listening to, I love playing, when I'm sad, and there's certain pieces I can play that help. And so the piano, I love doing puzzles,
mm,
either the jigsaw or Sudoku or, word, anything. I love puzzles.
mhm,
Um, and I love it, I think, like with math, and I've always said this to people, there's an end. Like even if it's hard to figure it out, there's an end and it all can fit together and you can look at it and be done. But with writing, as a writer, that you can work at something forever and still get a finished product and still find an error or have another thought about it. It's always constantly in
mhm.
process. But I feel like with math and with puzzles, you can figure it out,
Yeah. And it's
So, but
done.
with
Yeah, done. That's true. That's a good point.
yeah, yeah, because with even your faith life, like it's just so many unknowns. I mean, that's what faith is all about. So maybe it's my sense of wanting to control things, that to move things around. Maybe
We
that's what
have
it
a
is.
lot in common, Robin.
So that's my hobby, being in control, I
A
guess.
control freak.
That's what I like to do for fun. Um,
Yeah.
And just being with family, playing, we play board games. I love to
Oh,
laugh,
we're
you
huge board
know.
game fans.
So really, like, what are your favorites?
Uh, well, we love Catan and
Oh, I don't know that one.
um,
Okay.
have you played that?
I haven't.
Oh,
I
so we're
haven't.
into all these new, really hard and difficult Plunder, and my husband just got a bunch of new Star Wars Outer Rim,
Okay.
Forming Mars, like all these new board games that are very complicated.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
not like when I was growing up, Clue,
Yeah.
sorry. You know what I mean? The ones that are easy, you don't have to really think too hard over.
Right, right. But it's
Anyway,
funny, I never can win at Clue. You said easy, but for some reason I can never.
but I always loved Clue. I always loved Nancy Drew books.
Okay.
I love mystery
Yeah.
suspense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what about when you were a child? Did you have this dream of what you wanted to be when you grew up one day?
I always admired my oldest sister. She was a great public speaker. She played Dorothy in The Wiz. Like she was a go-getter. She and another friend put together this huge community choir, of teenagers, and it's still around. They have anniversaries. It's still there, today, decades later. And so I always admired her. I wanted to go to the college where she went. And but then, as I grew, my dreams kind of grew with me and grew a different, path. And but that was my goal. So I didn't even know what she wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be like her.
Like her.
But I was more of an introvert. So I just was able to put my thoughts more on paper
Yeah.
than to communicate them. There was a time, like even having this conversation with you, like I would be it would just be impossible. I mean, really, just a
Yeah.
few, couple like days ago. But God is good, and He takes those dreams and takes those ideas that you have, even about yourself, and changes them, and uses them. So, but I've always loved to write, and I think I wrote my first book in the third grade with my best friend. Then I think we got about 70 pages, and I remember it was about like butter pecan ice cream, and my mother ended up throwing them away. Like we like hand wrote the pages, and she was illustrating them, and somehow it didn't didn't survive the fireplace. My
Mhm.
mother thought it was just a bunch of notebook pages, but even then I didn't think writer,
Mhm.
but God did, and so I eventually I just set out, wanted to be an editor. And then I thought I'd love to be like a columnist. I wanted to, write things to encourage people, write devotionals. And but then He gave me the idea for my first book, which I didn't envision as, I didn't see myself necessarily as a fiction author. Um, but all of those different ideas, and I feel like parenting and devotionals got poured into fiction. So it's just been a blessing to be able to combine all those different things, even though I didn't imagine myself as a public speaker, but having to do
Here you
that too.
are.
So yeah. But
That's one thing I love about Christian fiction. I've always loved reading and I love fiction. And
yeah,
I feel guilty about it sometimes as a Christian. And I think I should be spending all this time like reading nonfiction books and,
yeah, yeah.
the Bible and just more, I don't know, it seemed more spiritual,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I have come to realize that good Christian fiction that weaves in truth, the
Yes,
light of Christ, hope
yes,
in a story, people can really relate to that. And
yes.
people who might not pick up the Bible or go to a church or read a nonfiction book will pick up a novel and
Mm-hmm,
they can find that truth in that
mm-hmm,
story. They find themselves in that story.
mm-hmm,
And that's
mm-hmm.
one I just love good Christian fiction that does that well.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think God uses, I remember my senior year, and I'd taken AP Lit, and one of the questions, when you're taking the exam, they're asking you to make all these different weird connections. And I remember even then, I can't remember exactly the name of the book, but seeing this spiritual meaning behind within this, piece of literature. And I'm sure the author, it wasn't Christian fiction, but I think God gives you a vision, even as, as believers, we can see his truth in, like he said, in nature, like, in the trees and outside, like his
Yes.
truth is truth. And so I love being able to, like, I love reading like you, but, just being able to make these different connections. And then as a writer, we can do that for other readers to create those connections and create these pictures and these, these different worlds and these settings, but all that point to Christ. It's a responsibility, but it's just a blessing. It's an
Yeah,
opportunity.
such a
So yeah.
privilege. It's an honor. Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention too, when you were talking about how you wanted to be like your sister, because you admired her so much, but then you realized that she was more outgoing and you're more of an introvert. And I just think that's a huge lesson for us about comparison and
Hmm.
just trying to stay in our lane and do
Yeah.
what God has wired us to do and gifted us to do and not try
Hmm.
to be like someone else. Because I have found myself over the years doing that too. I have a best
Yeah.
friend who is just witty and funny, and she's just outlandish, and just out there
Uh-huh.
and is a great speaker, and people just gravitate to her. And I always found myself wishing that I was more like that I could be that bold and boisterous and
Right.
funny and all the things, and spent a lot of time wishing to be somebody different
Yeah.
than me,
Yeah.
and finding myself in writing, like you said, like you can really express yourself better through the written word,
Hmm.
than speaking, and I find that too, and I
Hmm.
think there's a freedom that comes with that. And so to me, this is an interview, yes, and we're going to talk about your book, but for people who are watching, to this is maybe for you too out there, that maybe you're struggling right now with
Hmm.
what am I supposed to be doing with my life? What is my passion? What is my calling? What does God want me to do? Maybe you're thinking about being a writer. Um,
Hmm.
take that to God and let him, use the gifts he's put in you to do whatever he's calling you to do, and don't compare
Right.
to other people.
Right.
That's critical. And especially once you do
Yeah.
start writing, you start comparing yourself to other writers. Oh my goodness. It's like, oh, I could never write like her. I could never
Right.
be that eloquent. Nobody's going to want to read this. All the things, that go through your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes away the joy
Hmm.
of, what you have, what you do, how God designed you. Like he designed each of us for a purpose. My middle sister, she's fantastic on piano, like just
Hmm.
fantastic. She's eager for it as
Hmm.
well. She reads really, really well. Her fingers seem like 10 miles long, even though she's like shorter than I am even. And I would compare myself and think, well, I can't play by ear and it would kind of take away what I could do. But then
Hmm.
I realized, this brings me joy, and I shouldn't not do it just because I'm thinking I can't do it this way.
Yeah.
We're good for comparing ourselves. You're right. Like I don't
Mhm.
write this way. I don't write romance, or I don't write this, but God gives you, your own gift, and,
Mhm.
open your box and enjoy your gift, that he's
Absolutely.
given you rather than,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your writing and your book. So the
That's right. The book.
genre that you write, what inspired you to write in the genre that you write? Tell us about that.
I think we were talking earlier, like when I started writing, I didn't think even about a genre. I didn't think about an audience. I didn't think about, I just was writing a story. I write down these traditions and, I wanted to preserve something because I knew my grandmothers were passing on. I was finally mature enough to realize that I had this gift with them, and, was kind of taking it for granted. And so I was trying to write down all these different things to save it for my children to pass down so they could see all these, even superstitions, just different things from our family, songs and music. And then the story came out of it, that first story, with a long time coming. Um, and I was really set on this book and getting this book published, for years. I couldn't even move on to something else, to write something else, because I was thinking about getting that. I feel like that was the call, this one story. But since then, realizing, okay, I love Southern fiction just because it incorporates, faith. Like Southern fiction just is so rich with just faith and all those things I wanted to write about, songs and the food and tradition
Mhm.
and you know, the sounds of living here, just this, you know, the voices, you know, I can hear different people speak. And so that's what I'm trying to communicate in the writing, you know, with accents and different things like that. So just called to write, you know, Southern fiction and to show that, you know, a Southern accent doesn't mean you're stupid, you know, that's, you know, or it just,
We're
there's
not
a,
all Hicks, right?
yeah, we're not all Hicks. You know what I mean? It doesn't, that accent does not mean you're a Hick, right? Um, so yeah, it's just called to write that into contemporary. I've always thought of it as like upmarket fiction because I love the story. It's story driven, but also I love, you know, good literature. I love, you know, the writing and words and
Mm,
I guess that comes from also just teaching my kids. We love wordly wise. We love vocabulary and to use them. And so it's just kind of that middle ground where it's story, but also I love to tell it slowly. I love for it to unfold. If you
mm,
think about sitting with your grandmothers, like they didn't get right to the point. Like sometimes it just took a while for the story to unfold. And or, you know, some of the greatest things like syrup or molasses, they come slowly, but they're rich and they're full. And
mm.
so that's what I like to write about. And that's how I like to write. So
That sounds
um
awesome.
Jen
Love
and
that.
yeah, I don't know. It's a calling, I guess.
Yeah. So we talked about how Christian fiction can reach people with the hope of Christ and the message, of the Lord. So how do you do that in your writing? How do you incorporate those themes without being maybe what they call preachy?
Right.
How do you go about it?
Well, I'm sure my children probably think I'm preachy.
Yeah.
I always tell them I've got my little pulpit in my backpack and I whip it out. But I had to pray about what I'm going to write. And I have to be inspired. I know people who plan out, you know, books for years. They could tell you what book 25 is going to be about, and they're on book 4. But I really have to be inspired and led, you know, by the Lord to write something. Something could strike me, you know, in church um, or just anywhere. But and then I'll find a verse that will be the theme of the story, and I'll make, you know, I just try to, as I'm writing, like, how does this support that, you know, that theme, or how does that support that scripture? Like with the Dysfunction Junction, Psalm 27 is like very precious to me, but there's a verse in Psalm 27 that says, you know, even if my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord will take care of me.
Mm,
And there have been so many days, it was during this time when that book, you know, I was writing that book, where I did feel just alone. Like, and we do feel alone, like even in your thoughts or what you're going through, or rejected. And but the Lord, He provides for us like all along the way. You may not even realize it, that this friend or this verse or this situation you can draw from, like He is with you, like He is with us in what we're going through, but He provides in unexpected ways. And that's what that story is about, like with these 3 women who have felt, you know, neglected, or, you know, have had like a very difficult childhood, but God had provided for them, you know, in, you know, a neighbor. He provided for them in relationships as they grow up, or just even in that hard thing, He has provided. And so that's what I, you know, tried to focus that book on. How does that verse, um, how do we see that being, you know, lived out within that book? So,
mhm.
um, but I don't know,
So,
as we live, and, you know, I had a debate with someone who's an artist once about, like, she said, fiction is not possible to have Christian fiction.
hmm,
I guess just in the fact that it's not true, it's fiction.
mhm,
But so I just said, as a believer, like everything I do is an outpouring of that. You know, as an artist, she's an artist, so she has an artistic eye, so she applies that, you know, probably that eye to how she decorates her house or how she does, you know, whatever. And I feel that as a believer, that colors everything that we do. It colors every choice that we make, the words that we write, what we say. So um, so there is, you know, that's how we can have Christian fiction, because that truth is within our stories. So
mm.
yeah.
So is the Dysfunction Junction story inspired by any true events from life. Yay! That's such a cool title and such a cool cover too.
Yeah, I love the spine and everything. But
Mhm.
it's funny, when I talked with Jan, I met with Jan, I guess a few years before this was published, but we were talking about my first book and, just different ideas. And I had Dysfunction Junction, that title in my head.
Mm.
It's been there for years, even though the story wasn't fully fleshed out and what I wanted to write about. But yeah, Dysfunction Junction is, I don't want people to focus, I guess, on the dysfunction part.
Well, we can all relate to that though.
But we can
We're
all
all
relate, right?
dysfunctional, right? In some way.
Right. But there has to be, it's like at a crossroads where we come to a point, right, where we have to make a choice to either go this way or that way. And we're going to choose healing, or we're going to continue to choose the hurt, or the pain, or, the point where all of the problems and the dysfunction, the bad choices, we have to get to a point in our life where we're ready, for God to heal that part in our life or in our hearts, or to make a change. So it's like, for these characters, they have to reach that point. You kind of get to that point in your life where there's a need. You recognize I have a need, and how am I, how will God, or how will we meet that need, or how will we allow that need to be met? So but yeah, that's it. I love the title. I love the cover. She reminds me actually of just of my mom, just in how, I don't know, she's looking to me like, where is she looking? Is she turning, for the reader, do you think she's turning away from what's behind her? Because there are these little images behind her,
Mm.
and facing forward. What is she thinking about? I think it just conjures up so many different things. Is she looking toward the sun?
Mm.
SUN, or capital SON, there's just so many different things that I feel like you can think about when you look at the cover.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
It kind of speaks to you, right? And kind of
Yes.
spurs your imagination.
Yeah.
So as writers, we have this goal of putting out a compelling story for readers. We want to reach readers and for them to grow or grasp a truth or just be entertained, whatever it is. But as the writer of that story, there's a lot that God does in us as we're writing this story. So what do you feel like God taught you while you were writing Dysfunction Junction?
Mm. Wow, it was such a season writing it. And that you did ask me if there was anything, any true stories. There are some, the characters do share some things like from my childhood, but just, funny stories. But like we come like all from this place, I think. And as a writer, um I'm sorry, it was such a hard time. Like my husband, he broke his leg during that time. He'd have surgery. My father's going through cancer. He was
Mm.
diagnosed with cancer. Um, it was just hard to write. Like the story I thought was so easy. I started over several times. I had, get um, I turned it in late. And since then, I'm struggling a little bit. My sister, my oldest sister, she was diagnosed. She is diagnosed with heart failure. And she's in the hospital, right now. And she's going to require a heart transplant.
So sorry.
Yeah, it's just, and so even like with just the, once it's published, once you make it through, and you're ready for this launch, and it's just, showing you that God is doing something with, your relationships. And, um, we've had, with, sisters, you have your interesting dynamics, like with, you can, and it's kind of how the story is, where you can grow up in the same home or experience something. You can have 50 eyewitnesses and you're going to get 50 different versions of what happened. And that's kind of with this story, with these three women, they can have this same shared experience, but then have different outcomes because of their relationship with each other, their relationship with the people in their lives, their relationship with God. It's going to color how they see that experience and how they see their life and how they use that experience, either move forward or stay mired in the past, or how they treat other people. And I'm learning, just learning through, writing this book, and even now, how God needs to change, like how you view your life, like how you view your experiences. Do you see them as holding you back? Do you see them as stumbling blocks or stepping stones? Do you allow them to pull you together with the people that you love, or do you, allow those situations to drive you apart? I mean, so I don't know, with this book, it was hard to write it. It was hard, it's hard to talk about it. Just because, it just goes to that place for me. And I hope that it, encourages people. I mean, I know that people will read books to escape. So, a lot of people like, I don't want to read, as we talked about, issue books or, women's fiction or whatever, because, I don't need to read about what's going on right now. But I think God wants us to take what's going on right now and learn and grow and find encouragement and hope. Like, even in your reading the Psalms, we're reading the Psalms this morning, I think Psalm 42 and 43, and how they were originally like written together. It was like one psalm, and in it you can hear this despair. You can see, where are you, God? But then there's hope in it as well. And you wouldn't not read it because you find it discouraging or you find this despairing, the author, but there's hope and even that there's hope. So I don't know.
I,
I'm
for
rambling,
one, am
but
all for reading issue
yeah,
fiction.
yeah,
That's my greatest love, especially when the hope of Christ is blatant and for all to
yeah,
see that, yeah, it's hard. There's some
yeah.
terrible things that happen, but God's there. He's walking with us through it.
Yeah, there's hope in it, there's through it, and hope on the other side of it. And I think that's what people need. Like, I think that you don't need to read about roses and sunshine all the time to find hope. There's hope in the every day. There's not, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So when does the book come out?
it comes out in a few weeks, actually, February 6th. So it's on, yeah. So I think maybe 4 weeks from today. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so the day that we're recording, this is going to actually post on my blog, I think in 2 weeks. So
Okay.
by
Okay.
that point, when everybody's watching this, they'll only have to
Yes.
wait
Yes.
probably a little less than 2 weeks before
Yeah,
the
that's
book comes
right. So
out.
pre-order is still, you still have
Yeah,
time to pre-order.
pre-orders,
And
and somebody's going to win a copy of it by commenting on this interview. So that'll be exciting for somebody. And so as we wrap this up, like I could literally talk to you all day. I really feel like I could. I have found a true friend here today,
oh,
and I
absolutely.
feel like we have a lot in common just from our conversation. So it's been a real pleasure getting to know you. I know people can find you online. They can subscribe to your newsletter, which I
Yes.
highly recommend. Uh, find you on Instagram, and I guess, are you on Facebook? Uh,
Yeah.
so all
Yeah,
the
of course.
platforms, and I'll put
Yeah.
those links as
You won't
well.
find me on TikTok though, probably.
No, I'm not on TikTok either. Now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have my limits. I don't have time to learn something new right now. You know. So, all right,
Yeah.
I know we got to wrap it up, but before we say goodbye, just tell us really quickly what we can look forward to next from you after this book comes out. I'm sure you're working on something else.
I'm writing a book it's a great title as well, hopefully.
Mhm.
I can hold on to it because we know how that works.
Yeah.
But it's set in a bookstore in North Carolina, and a mature couple who have a lot to learn from a younger woman who comes into their life. And it is a hope-filled story, and I'm looking forward to it. I turned it in August, so I
Mm.
probably should be writing it this very minute. And hopefully comes out next year. So
Yeah,
yeah.
awesome. Well, I'll look forward to that. I like it already. Just
But if if you don't, even if you don't get the book like pre-ordered to, I am having a launch party on February 10th at Bookmarks in Winston-Salem. So for anyone who's in the area, I'd love to have you come out.
yeah, it sounds good. Well, thanks again, Robin. It's been a real pleasure meeting you and talking with you today, and
Thank
just
you.
pray great things for your writing future,
Thank
for
you.
this
We're praying for
book
you.
and all the books to come.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.